Hello and welcome to this Wednesday's morning market briefing. We've got lots to talk about, but firstly, UN chief denounces clear violations of international law in Gaza, as well as that Donald Trump moves to torpedo Tom Emmer's bid for US House Speaker. We've got lots happening on the charts also, with lots happening on the economic calendar, with lots of data coming out today, but we'll come to that near the end, so make sure you stay around till you see that. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. And the first thing to talk about, of course, is the UN chief and his comments on Gaza. Now, the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, condemned so-called clear violations of international law in Gaza. This comes as the US has headed to mounting pressure on the Israeli government to pause its bombardment of the besieged strip and allow in more aid. As you know, this is coming back to this Israeli-Gaza conflict, which we've been talking about for the past 18 days, really, since really the conflict sparked up again. And that came after, the Hamas terrorists did storm Israeli territory and massacre over 1,400 civilians. In response to that, the Israeli, army and air force has responded with not only aerial bombardments, but artillery strikes and tank firings on Hamas targets within Gaza, as a result causing collateral damage to the Gazans, to Palestinian civilians within Gaza. And this is the kind of clear violations of international law which the UN chief is now commenting on, with Guterres telling the UN Security Council yesterday the safety of citizens is paramount. Now, he also said, that he made arguments that ordering 1 million civilians to evacuate to the south of Gaza was not justified by the argument of human shields, since there is little food, water and shelter in the south. Now, this is obviously following, Israel's kind of order of civilians within the north of Gaza to move to the south as soon as possible. It was originally stated as something that needed to take place within a day, but we haven't seen anything to do with that since. It's mainly just been an order to get south of Gaza as we continue to move closer to the prospect of a ground invasion into Gaza. And as a result, that's why Israel told civilians to move out of there, because they don't want to cause that collateral damage and have the ramifications from that. And, he did say, Guterres did say that, the arguments around calling civilians to evacuate to the south was not justified because of, human shields. And this is, a common argument made by the IDF and Israeli government, is that, a large part of these civilian casualties are from, the human shields which Hamas has been implementing. We know of this through the tunnel networks under Gaza, and the numerous military institutions and parts of infrastructure which has been implemented and is in civilian areas. And this is the argument as a result. What the IDF is trying to explain is that this is the fault of Hamas within Gaza for placing these areas of military infrastructure around human infrastructure as well. But Guterres is saying that that is wrong as a justification for the campaign. The UN chief took a surprisingly and strikingly pro-Palestine stance, saying the Palestinian people have been subjugated to 56 years of occupation, in response to the question of why Hamas attacked on the 7th of October. So here he was responding to, the idea of why, the Palestinian militants, named Hamas, attacked Israel's territory and, massacred their civilians. And his explanation for why that is his comment on occupation of, Palestinian territory by Israel, with Palestinian officials saying a further 700 people had been killed in the last 74 hours. Now, the Israeli ambassador to the UN said the response was shocking from Guterres and called for a resignation, whilst also cancelling his meet with Guterres in protest. And the US Defense Secretary Anthony Blinken, blamed Hamas for using human shields, but also called for humanitarian pauses in Israel's airstrikes against targets in Gaza. And now, obviously, this is all in response to the October the 7th Hamas terror attacks on Israeli territory. Now, Macron also did visit Israel yesterday, saying the first objective of Israel and its allies should be to rescue hostages, and our duty was to fight against terrorist groups without mercy, but with rules as well. So this is the kind of rhetoric that we've been hearing a lot now from these Western nations such as France, Germany, the UK and the US, that basically that they support, Israel's defense of its territory through, the now kind of operation to take out Hamas militants, which, aided and, did take hostages from Israeli territory, as well as massacring thousands of civilians. And this has kind of been the argument made by many Western nations that it is their right to defend themselves. However, international law should be abided, and civilian casualties should obviously be minimized. Now, he also did advise Israel against launching a full-scale ground invasion of Gaza, and this is what we've been increasingly hearing from not only officials but from the public, is this kind of anti-invasion of Gaza. But then, the Israeli government would respond to that by saying, how else can we, take back the hostages which have been taken? How else can we kill and, take and capture Hamas militants which involved themselves in the terror attacks on the 7th of October? And all these arguments are now being made by Israel in response to that. Now, with Macron, despite that, despite those comments against launching a full-scale invasion, he did also call for an international coalition against Hamas, and this would be similar to the Western coalition against ISIS, as we did see in Syria and Iraq during ISIS's peak, with 2 more hostages being released on Monday, with them saying after they were released that they went through hell. So they said, we went through hell, with Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that the ground invasion, it is coming. So, still making those statements around, the fact that the invasion will still take place. And this is in contrast to what we've been hearing from reports around, there being issues within the government around whether they should do it or not. And they're not sure completely, or at least there's not, a unified government on this kind of decision of whether to invade or not. But that's all to talk about for Gaza. Definitely keep your eyes on that as it continues to add to, certain safe haven assets as a result of, the ramifications of an invasion. But next to talk about, of course, is Donald Trump and his response to Tom Emmer's bid for the US House Speaker. Now, we've been talking about this for quite some time now in reference to, the Republican Party's issues with being able to kind of elect a new House Speaker. And this followed, the kind of ousting of Kevin McCarthy by, the more hardline Trump populists within the Republican Party, and since then they've been unable to really get more, find a suitable candidate for, Republican Speaker. And they've been through now, two other Speaker nominations, those being Stephen Scalise and also Jim Jordan. So, two significant names within the Republican Party which did try and run already for US House Speaker, but they came to no avail. Now, Donald Trump has moved to torpedo Tom Tom Emmer's bid to become Speaker for the House of Representatives, and this comes just hours after Republican members selected him as the newest candidate, with Trump calling him out of touch and a globalist rhino. What is a rhino? That's a Republican in name only, so often used to describe Republicans with a more Democrat leaning. Also, voting for him would be a tragic mistake. That is what Donald Trump did say, and this marks another twist in the tedious and lackluster attempt by Republicans to elect a new speaker. As you know, they've tried numerous times now to elect a new speaker to the House of Representatives, and to no avail has anything come to it. With Jim Jordan failing and losing the vote, I believe 3 times, and Stephen Scalise, I know, 1 time. So, 4 attempts already at electing a new US House Speaker. That said, it did take 12 votes for Kevin McCarthy to become Speaker. So definitely keep your eyes out on this, with new remarks questioning now whether Emmer could unite the party in the vote, as obviously if he's already receiving so much criticism from such a kind of leading figure within the Republican Party, of course that being Donald Trump, it is unlikely that Tom Emmer will win his bid to become House Speaker. And Emmer is the House Majority Whip and ran before at the National Republican Congressional Committee, and even before the Trump comments, he did face an uphill battle to win enough votes. As we do know, despite Jim Jordan having Trump's backing, he failed 3 times already to become US House Speaker, with the House now being without a Speaker for 3 weeks. And this is significant, of course, because they aren't able to pass any legislation until they have a House Speaker. With a successor needing to overcome the party's sharp divides and the populist right wing. After all, it was the populist right wing that support Trump, greatly, which did remove the last House Speaker from the party, which has now caused these issues which the Republicans are now facing, with many hard right members saying they will not endorse Emmer due to his approval of the Joe Biden Electoral College result and his approval of same-sex marriage. So, Tom Emmer, did kind of say that the election wasn't rigged when it did, when those scandals did come out, and those conspiracy theories around those issues. And he did say, those aren't correct, as well as, backing same-sex marriage, which those more hardline Republicans are more so against. And until a new speaker is elected, new aid packages for Ukraine and Israel cannot be approved, as well as much other policy proposals. And the looming, government shutdown is weighed once more into the mix, as by, mid-November, they will need to, come up with a, federal budget for the year. Otherwise, there will be a government shutdown, which obviously has its massive ramifications on the US, as well as on global markets, of course, as a result of the US's global influence. But that's all to talk about for the articles, really. Next to talk about, of course, is the charts. Now, we're going to shoot through the charts today, but first to talk about is the US 30, so US indices. Now, we did talk about how, US indices had seen a decline since, Tuesday, the 17th of October. But since then, and since yesterday, US indices did respond positively. They were consolidating on Monday, but yesterday, on Tuesday, we did see a positive response from US indices. That said, they still are consolidating somewhat. And if we are looking, on a bearish perspective, because we did break below that 78.6% Fibonacci level, we could be looking at a retracement up and until this 38.2% Fibonacci area, where we have a strong area of liquidity. So that's definitely an area to note if we begin to look more bearish on US indices, as after all, we have had some interesting economic data come out today around manufacturing within the US, which did come in higher than expected, as well as in services industry, I believe. And as a result, this is positive for the US economy, but this is bad for, the Fed, which now may need to raise rates further, which will obviously bring down US indices more as borrowing rates are going up and restricting their ability to grow as a company through debt. But next to talk about, of course, is the dollar. Now, the dollar had a really strong reaction today, obviously following that data release that I just spoke about. And this is, the manufacturing data that came out today to show, the US was doing better than forecast, and therefore many people have then switched their view even further to the hawkish kind of view of the way the Fed will enact its monetary policy, as people are now expecting the Fed to have more wiggle room in raising rates further as the US economy is stronger than expected. That said, we did kind of stop out any buy orders on the dollar by breaking below this prior low, this area of liquidity where we knew there were going to be lots of buy orders. It did break below, spiking below before, having a great rush to the upside, and is now, near this significant trend line where, 3 times, price has responded in a bearish fashion from that area. So it'll be interesting coming off the back of that fundamental news today, whether we will now see a retracement from that area, possibly back down to that 38.2% Fibonacci area, where we know there's a strong area of liquidity on the buy side as well, where then we might be able to break above this area and trend line. So definitely keep your eyes on the dollar. Next to talk about though is Euro USD. So on the topic of the dollar still really, but this in reference to the sell-off in the euro today, not only as a result of the strong buying pressure for the dollar as a result of the strong US economic news, but also because we saw such low performance within the European economies and German economies today, because although there was the US economic data released around manufacturing and services, the same could be said for European and German services and manufacturing. And with that, we did see levels of services and manufacturing coming in below expectations, therefore encouraging the central bank to lower interest rates sooner, as a result decreasing the value of euro. As if there's a lower rate of interest, then obviously you're earning less money on that interest. But yes, we have fallen from that area as a result, that Fibonacci extension area, which we noted yesterday, and it's fallen once again into this area of liquidity. So possibly, it could find some support to the upside, but we have broken below that 50% Fibonacci area, so it may be unlikely. So definitely keep your eyes on euro. But next to talk about is pound yen. It did move up today further. As we can see here, this trend line has been working as, a kind of very bullish trend line to the upside, which, it had responded from many times, but has become kind of this area of resistance, this resistance trend line for pound yen, and it's been unable to break above it. We saw that there, and we have come up yesterday, and formed a double top where the liquidity of sell orders within this area has allowed for a great deal of a sell-off on pound yen, and we've seen that fall in price as a result. So definitely keep your eyes on that. With Bitcoin though, increasing speculation for Bitcoin ETFs have pushed Bitcoin very high. Now we have been consolidating around these areas for some time now on Bitcoin, but look how far we've kind of jumped and rallied out of that area, breaking all these prior highs, moving to levels not seen since May of 2022. So really significant levels for Bitcoin. Very bullish performance, of course. So definitely keep your eyes on Bitcoin, as we may be expecting a retracement of sorts, as Bitcoin does become increasingly overbought, and the potentials for that are great sell-off volume. So definitely keep your eyes on that, as we did reach the 90 on the RSI. But next to talk about is gold, which has stagnated slightly after the strong rally that we've seen recently following the Gaza-Israel conflict. After it starting here on the 7th of October, it pushed all the way to the upside, reaching levels near the $2,000 mark. But we did reach a certain level of 1996 on the charts, and we did respond in a negative bearish fashion from that area, falling to the downside and spiking into this area of liquidity around the 50% Fibonacci area. Now the potential is, for moves further to the upside. Now it's gained that liquidity, but also this kind of overbought motion for gold could be giving bearish signals, especially if this ground invasion of Gaza doesn't take place, and therefore the fundamental image of this conflict will change and the risks of regional escalation will fall, as a result driving this safe haven asset further to the downside. So definitely keep your eyes on gold as escalations continue within the conflicts. But oil did fall today, so we did talk about oil did fall yesterday, so we did talk about on Tuesday, how oil had moved below this trend line, this bullish channel, and from that we kind of said it's likely it will retest before moving lower. It didn't quite reach that 38.2% Fibonacci area, and it did respond negatively as expected. So it'd be interesting to see how that shapes up. Now it's reaching this 50% Fibonacci area that we've looked at previously, so it may not be too relevant anymore, but definitely keep your eyes on oil as it is highly affected by these issues within Gaza and Israel. But that's all to talk about on the charts. Next to talk about, of course, and lastly to talk about, of course, is the economic calendar. So we have some data coming out today, but not too much, but one very significant event, that being Jerome Powell's speech. Now, firstly, we have Aussie inflation rate, so you need to know that if you're trading any AU pairs, as well as German business sentiment, as well as US 30-year mortgage rates, along with the Bank of Canada's interest rate and press conference. So that'll be very influential on the dollar, as well as any USD CAD pairs, or the pair of USD CAD only, but also we've got the ECB's President Lagarde's speech. So obviously she runs the ECB's monetary policy agenda, so definitely listen out for that if you're trading the euro. As well as that, we have Jerome Powell's speech today, so some very important speech taking place, and that will have great ramifications across US markets, as well as US indices and the dollar as well, just because of how influential Jerome Powell is over US monetary policy. So definitely listen out for that. But that's all to talk about really on the charts, on the articles, and on the economic calendar. I think we got through a lot today. I hope you have a great trading day, but that's all from us at Wildwood Capital. Have a great one. See you later. Bye.